What do you have to do to actually have a successful business? Because you can't just stay idle. You have to develop, you have to grow.
I think I had 15 people working for me. I had my first child. I had won a huge contract worth over $1 million, all within 18 months. Entrepreneurship comes to us all at different times, right? We can have the opportunity to start again, and it doesn't matter what age you're at.
Today's guest is Jen Blandos, a serial entrepreneur with nearly 3 decades of experience building multiple 7-figure businesses across the globe. She's the founder of Female Fusion, a network empowering thousands of women to launch and grow their companies. She knows what it takes to set up a business from scratch, to survive challenges most of us can't even imagine, and to come out stronger. In this episode, she shares her hard-won lessons of how first-time entrepreneurs can set up their business the right way. I know you for how long now, and I just don't know anything about you, Jen. Who is Jen? Where is Jen coming from? What are you fighting for? All this, the history, a little bit of history, if you can share with me and everybody who is watching.
I think with who is Jen? That's a big question. I think I'm a lot of things depending upon who you ask, and different people who know me well will probably say different things. I would say the things that kind of underpin me is probably one of the biggest thing is curiosity and the desire for doing something different, something bigger, something new, something different. And that is something which has been with me since I was a child. And it always got me in trouble as well. I was one of those kids who I was always grounded. I was always in detention. I was always getting told off. I was always told that I was too much. And for me, it was just that there was this curiosity and I wanted to know more. I wanted to do more things, do bigger things. And I think, looking back at that from being the kid that always got into trouble to where I am today, I think that explains a lot of where I've ended up and what I've done. So I'm British Canadian, but I grew up in Canada. Um, and I grew up in a smaller city called Calgary, which is much bigger today. But when I grew up there, it was a much smaller city. I felt it was like small. I thought it was restricted and I wanted to get out of there. So when I was old enough, I actually went to Montreal and studied in Montreal and finished my university degree. And back then in Canada, it wasn't common that you went to university away from where you grew up. It was always that you go to university, you live at home, and then if you want to do something different, then you can. But you normally end up staying in the same city. And to me, I was like, I don't belong here. I don't want to stay. I want bigger, interesting, different stuff. So I ended up going to Montreal, and I was working on a degree in politics, and I worked on the Quebec referendum in Montreal, and I worked with the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada, Jean Charest. And I was involved in that whole campaign. And to me, that was like fascinating to be involved in something that involved change and, making a difference. And I was working on the side of Quebec staying within Canada. And that was a very big thing back in the 90s when I was a student. But then, I graduated, I worked, and I was like, I want more. I don't like being here. I don't like it just felt very small to me. So I moved to Belgium and I worked in Brussels and I worked on trade disputes and mergers doing strategic communications. And then left Belgium, went to Sweden, spent some time in Stockholm. I worked for Edelman PR, which is a big global PR agency, and I ran the B2B and corporate team for Edelman in Stockholm. And then my partner, who later became my husband, now my ex-husband, was a journalist with Reuters, and he got offered this huge opportunity to work in the Balkans after the end of the Balkan Wars. So I was like, why not? Something different. Let's go to the Balkans. So I ended up being there. We were there for a year and then ended up back in the UK. And when I ended up in the UK, um, I couldn't find a job, even though I had all these recommendations. I'd done all these really cool campaigns, different things across Europe for communications and PR. Nobody would give me a job. And I remember doing interviews and people saying to me, yeah, but you don't have London experience. You don't have a British accent. You don't, like, somebody legitimately said, you don't have a British accent. And I was like, and, that makes me relatable to international people. And I'm sure you can relate to that as well. That, like, I never fit in, like, never ever fit in anywhere. And even it was, in the UK, I was like, where are you from? Where, and I go to Canada and I get the same thing. Where are you from? Because I don't have an accent that fits with everywhere. So I set up my first business in London because I was like, a girl's got to work. And I did that initially just for a way to make some extra cash. And I ended up being very good at new business and building a business. And within about 18 months of creating that business, I had 15 people working for me. I had had my first child and I had won a huge contract worth over $1 million, all within 18 months. And at that time, I think I was about 30 years old. So I was still very, very young. And didn't know how to run a business, didn't know what that looked like. And so it was a very steep learning curve along the way. And then, with
What
that,
was the
I built
business?
it was initially it was a PR agency. So that was PR and communications was what I knew. And then I added on to that a communications training company because back then the universities didn't have very good degree programs in communications and PR. And so a lot of people were learning on the job. So basically, I designed a number of training courses to teach people on the job and then added on to that things like media training, public speaking training. And my business grew from, um, very small business to starting to get some bigger contracts and other people recommending me. I didn't even do any marketing for my business. It was just through recommendations that I ended up growing and then went back to Brussels, which is what I knew. I felt very comfortable working within the EU. That was kind of my comfort space or safe space because it was very international. So I set up um, an office for my company in Brussels, and then I started getting invited to the GCC region, so to Saudi, to the UAE, to Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and I ended up setting up a business in Dubai and then Abu Dhabi as well, doing PR communications, more in kind of like a higher level. So strategy, looking at kind of longer term visions for businesses and governments, and also around communications and PR. And it was just that international to me that was so exciting. You work in different countries, different cultures, different languages, and understanding what makes people tick and how you can communicate with them and how you can support people across these different markets always really fascinated me. So I think I was always meant to be somewhere that wasn't my home country. And so I moved to Dubai over 16 years ago now. And initially it was just for 1 year. I was offered a contract with the UAE government. My company did the UAE government's first communication strategy for the federal government and all of their government entities. And they said, they're like, you're not doing it from London. You're not flying, because I was flying in and out from the UK. And so they said, you need to come, we need to set up a business, you need to invest in the country, train up a team. And if you decide not to stay here, um, you can go back to the UK and you'll have a team here that will be trained in your methodology that can service us. So that's what I did initially, just for a year. I came, wasn't planning on staying. And loved it so much and the opportunities that were here that I ended up staying.
Wow. Your story, you and me are quite alike because
Yeah.
I was the same. I was the same. I was thinking, oh, I can't stay and live in Bulgaria. And I was always looking out. Where can I go?
It
Is
just
that
felt right, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah,
think
it felt
that's the thing
big,
for me,
small, and
is it felt small, that I was like, "Yeah, but surely there's more to this. Like,
yeah.
there's more exciting things going on."
No, no, exactly. So the only difference is that I found the next job. You didn't, and you started your company, and I started mine, 25 years later. But anyway,
Well, entrepreneurship comes to us all at different times, right?
yeah.
And that's the thing that I think is so cool, is that we can have the opportunity to start again, and it doesn't matter what age you're at. If you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, anytime.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, that's a perfect segue. Let's talk about starting a business because as somebody who started many businesses, I just
Yeah.
want us to go through the whole process.
Okay.
So the first thing is obviously the idea, right? Is there is
Yeah.
something that you. So how do you start from here? The idea. How do you find the idea?
It's a really good question. Because and it's one that I do get asked, and in my role at Female Fusion, I do have that question a lot. And the idea can be anything, but I think the key thing is to decide if it's something that you can make money from, or if it's something that is just a hobby or a passion. And I do disagree when people will go and say, find what, lights you up, what's your passion, and turn that into a business. Because sometimes those passions are not going to be the thing that will allow you to quit your day job. So it's being able to look at, what is it that would excite me? So it could be, are there things that frustrate you? Are there things that you look at in your day-to-day life that you're like, oh, this is so challenging. I wish that they had this, or I wish that this was available. And wouldn't it be amazing? Wouldn't it make my life easier if this existed? And a lot of times that if you're feeling that, other people could be feeling that as well. And it could be a passion. It could be something that, maybe, for example, you love horses and you find that there's a way that you could create a business that would involve horses, whether it would be something that would be a product-based business, or it could be a service-based business. But the most important thing is it has to be something that you're going to be able to make money from.
All right. So that's the first thing. You have the idea. And then how do
Yeah.
you set it up? And when I say set it up, it's not about the accounting and the opening a company, etc. It's about the investment because you have to have some money up front.
Yeah.
And the leading question, the question after that is if you don't have this money, what do you do?
Mm. So I would like to, before we talk about money, if it's okay with you, Annie, I would like to go back one step when it comes to us kind of having the idea, because I think this is one of the things that gets forgotten about a lot, because people be like, I'm going to set up a business, I'm going to do this, go out and register the business, start doing the website, marketing materials, or looking for funding. But the one gap that's missed first is the research phase. And I believe that that is so important. And oftentimes people are scared of it, and so they'll miss it. But a lot of times when I see people having problems 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line, they haven't done the research first. And the research is done in a couple of areas. One, it's being really clear on who it is that you're going to be selling to, and what it is that you're going to be selling to them, and if they're actually going to buy from you. So how do you do that? It could be doing some research, so doing some desk research, but I also like encouraging people as well to do things like online surveys, focus groups, actually talking to the people who are going to buy from you, because oftentimes what happens is there's this disconnect that you're like, this is a great idea. I'm going to do this. But then you end up creating this business, maybe even getting the funding, and you don't have the people that want to buy from you, or you're missing something slightly. So having those conversations with people before you even go to the next stage really helps inform you about the direction that your business is going to take. Maybe also as well some of the specific products or services that you'll start with that they really want to be able to buy from you as well. So I would say that those are that's really important to get that right first. And then when you're sure that you actually have a business and you know that people are going to be interested in what it is that you do, then it's looking at the money side. And I think um, again, this is where people can get this wrong, because you can set up a business, especially if it's a service-based business, with very little financing. It can be done. And I think I don't know about you, but with my very first business, I was broke. I didn't have a lot of money. I had enough money to register my business. I had a lot of hard work. I wanted to learn. I put in crazy hours. I did everything myself. And as I started to get the money in and people paid me, that's when I started to invest more. I remember I did my website myself in the beginning. I learned about SEO. I did my marketing. I did my logo, all of it by myself. It was terrible. But the thing is like, what's more important? Like spending 6 months doing your logo, doing your website, getting prepared to be ready, or actually being really scrappy and getting out there and doing the work. So if it's something like a service-based business, and if money is a little bit tight, I would encourage people to learn as much as they possibly can and do it themselves. And then when you start to get paid from the clients or the customers for your service, then you can start reinvesting that money, because the things like branding are super important. You want to get those foundations right first. But in the beginning, if you have no money and this is kind of what you want to do, get some of the money in first and then invest that within the business. But if you're looking at something like a product business, that's completely different. And that as well is where you need to be really clear on what it is that you're doing, who you're servicing, really have a detailed business plan, and make sure as well that you've really got those projections about what sort of investment is needed and when you expect to start making money, because product businesses require a huge amount of investment. Um, I hear a lot of times, I think sometimes people naively think that if they come up with a great business idea, that there's just going to be a huge amount of investors that will invest in their business. We have a Facebook community which is free for female founders, and anybody can be a member. And I'll often see things like, I want to set up a cafe. I'm looking for investors. How do I find an investor, or how do I get a bank loan? And you see, I always kind of look at those comment threads. I never comment, but I like to kind of be a fly on the wall. And oftentimes you'll see that they've never worked in a cafe, never, they're not a chef or anything else. They're just somebody who's like, I would love to have a cafe. I think it's cool. And I'm going to go and ask for funding and somebody will give me investment. Um, doesn't work that way. So I always say to people to be very careful about that before you go and get that funding or take that bank loan. It's very, very hard to get investors to give you money. And typically, right now, where the money is going towards is any sort of tech businesses. So, ed tech, health tech, fed tech, food tech, all of these ones are the ones where you're here. Maybe if somebody's got a crazy idea or prototype, that then they might be able to get investment. But other than that, people are normally self investing, bootstrapping, as they call it, that you're
Yeah.
doing it all yourself, or borrowing money from friends and family.
Mm. All right. So we have the idea, we have the niche, we know who we are selling
Yeah.
to.
Mhm.
So what's next? How do you start with clients? What do you have to have marketing strategy? What are the channels? What are the next steps?
There's so many things. And again, I think this is, if you've never done it before, you don't know. And that can feel kind of scary and very overwhelming. And we talk about this with our members in Female Fusion as well, especially those that maybe have gone from a corporate role to all of a sudden going, I'm having a business. Um, that it's really important to get that foundation right, like to be very clear on what it is that you're selling, who you're selling to. Um, it is important to have a basic website or something somewhere that explains who you are and what you do. And again, you can if you don't have a lot of money, you can get websites, you can have templates, you can do it all yourself cheaply at first. But you want to be able to have some sort of presence that goes and says who you are, what you do, and how people can buy from you, and what it is to be able to do that. So you want to be able to have some sort of presence there. You want to also be visible. So typically in the beginning, you as a founder need to be visible. So how are you going to be visible? Because I hear from people sometimes who go, oh, I don't do social media, I hate social media. Okay, well, um you're going to have to kind of get over yourself that, I'm sorry, whether you like it or not, if you choose to have a business, you're going to have to be visible in some way because you're going to have to speak with clients or customers, and you need to be comfortable with that. If that is something that you feel so uncomfortable with, either you're going to have to pay somebody to do that or find a business partner who will do that and you do everything in the back end. But really, for a business, you need to be visible. So that is to have your personal brand as well as the brand of the business, and to be talking regularly about things that you care about and that matter to your business, and to be consistent with that. So for a lot of people who are leaving corporates and setting up businesses, that main platform is usually going to be LinkedIn. But it depends on what your business is. And um, sometimes people will try and be everywhere. That they'll be like, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. But the thing is that's too much in the beginning. Choose one platform that your ideal paying customer is going to be, and really focus on that. Have an account for you as the founder, so you work on your personal brand, but then you also want to start building that account for your business as well. So you need to be thinking about, who are these people that I'm trying to reach? How am I going to reach them? And how is it that they make a decision to buy from me? So sometimes it might be exclusively just social media and you connecting with people on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever the platform is of choice for you. Or it could be even more like showing up in person, speaking at events, going to events, volunteering to run workshops for local business councils or local authority events as well. Being able to show up and show people that you are the expert and that you are somebody that they want to know, like, and trust, and that they could buy from you. So really it's thinking about who you're talking to, who's going to buy from you, where you can find them, and what are all the possible ways to do that. And it's not just social media. There's a lot of in-person things that you could be doing as well, to be able to create that visibility with people.
Great. I completely agree with the thing about being on too many social medias,
Yeah.
because you don't um, focus on one, and you're just so scattered. And at the end of the day, nothing works. There's so many out there. You post stuff, but there is no strategy, nothing, and you flood the zone, but nothing
You
happens.
Yeah, and I think, like, look, it's not you and I have had businesses for a while, right? And so I think sometimes when you start and when you start building a business, you look at somebody like me or you look at somebody like you, Annie, and people are like, "Oh, this is easy. I'm gonna go and do that. I want to do that." And and it's not easy, like I'm an overnight success of busting my butt for the past 30 years and having so many people tell me no and having, ups and downs all the time. And that's just the way that it is, but not to make it so difficult for yourself. And I think sometimes we tend to overcomplicate things. And what you want to be thinking about as well is simplicity, because you don't want to be working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week in this business. Now, you will in the beginning, and it's going to be hard, but how can you make your business so it's going to be simple and enable you to be able to find the clients or the customers who will eventually buy from you? And that is really and I think that's where, going back a bit is that you need to really have that foundation, right? Getting the research, being really clear on who you're selling to, talking to those people, understanding like what is a trigger for them to go and buy. Maybe even working for free or giving some freebies to people in exchange for testimonials and hoping that those people will become raving fans and tell their friends and post about you and talk about you. And so thinking about ways that you can get those people to come into your orbit, but it comes down to the know, like, and trust factor.
Yeah. So once you have the business up and running, um,
Yeah.
I kind of feel that it's easier to get it up, and then it's much more difficult to continue running it and continue earning. And what do you think? And what do you have to do to actually have a successful business? Because you can't just stay with idle. You have to develop. You have to
Yeah.
grow. You have to change, and that's like daily.
Yeah. I think a big piece of advice that I say to founders, and we talk about a lot in Female Fusion as well, is that you need to be a jack of all trades. So you need to understand how every single thing works in your business. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to do everything in your business, but you need to understand how it works, because then when you understand how it works, it's much easier for you to be able to run that business. I was speaking with a friend of mine this week. She has a company that employs 80 people, and we were joking about this that, even though you have all of these people who work for you, we still know how to do every single thing in our businesses. So if somebody were sick, or let's say, for example, nobody could get into the office that day, you know how to do all of those little things in the business. Now, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to create systems and processes in your business so it doesn't rely on you. So you want to understand how everything works, understand what good looks like and how you want that to play out in your business, and create a standard operating procedure or a system for how that works. Document it and then hand it over to other people to do. So that means that they have an understanding about what good looks like and what your expectations are. And I was speaking with another friend of mine who also has a really big business, and she was so frustrated because she's like, I have all these people, they're letting me down. The marketing is terrible. Like this team isn't running well. I feel like this follow up with like our clients aren't as good as what I want. And I said to her, do you have standard operating procedures for that? Like what is the expectation? And she's like, well, I hired them, they've got all this experience. I'm expecting that they're going to do that. And, I jokingly said to her, assumption is the mother of all F ups, basically, because for us to assume that they're going to do it the way that we want it done is not reasonable. It's not fair. Like she's to blame for that not working within her business. And we've all done the same thing. Like as you're growing your business, sometimes you grow so fast, you hire these people and those hires barely work out because you haven't had the time to be clear on this is what good looks like and this is what my expectations are. So when you understand that in the very beginning about how everything works, then you can go, right, this is how I want it to work. Here are the standard operating procedures. Come to me if you have questions, but I trust you to do that. And because I've had businesses for so long, when I built Female Fusion, that was one of the things that I promised myself in the beginning that I was going to build the business from the very beginning, even when it was me, and then I had my first hire and second, third hires, is that everything had a system and a process and a standard operating procedure. And I trained my team on how to do them as well. And so then it got to a point where part of their KPIs is that you need to do at least 2 SOPs a month for something new that's happening within the business. And you need to edit or fix to that are maybe a bit dated or the technology has changed. So we have the most recent everything. So what that means is we have a playbook on how to run the business, and you can have a playbook for a person of one, or if you have 10 people, but it means, you hire a virtual assistant and it's like, okay, here's all the SOPs. Here's the links to how I want things done. Come to me if you have questions. Here's my tone of voice. Here's, our branding guidelines. These are my expectations on what good looks like. So you're able to do that. And it's easier for you to get out of running the business or being in the business and focus on running the business. So get out of being in the business and focus on the business. And that helps you get to the growth.
Great. And Jen, what about marketing? You said that you have a great business and great idea that solves a lot of a big issue for somebody or for a group of people.
Yeah.
You don't need to advertise, but is that the case generally? And what is the best approach when you are, let's say, a one-person business? And we're not talking about big business.
Yeah.
We talk about lifestyle, up to 5 people working for you. How do you approach this?
So it really depends on what your business is and what you're doing. I think probably 9 times out of 10 for businesses, and there is the rare exception that you need to have some sort of marketing strategy and implementation plan for your business. The exception to that, where people can get away with maybe not pushing marketing as much as maybe what you need to, are typically people who are selling business to business and have been with that industry for a number of years and have established connections. And so it's a matter of like picking up the phone. You have that relationship, you have that reputation, people will buy from you, they'll tell their friends, and you're typically selling or delivering things on a very high level, on a high price point, that it's very much relationship to relationship. But that doesn't happen very often, and it doesn't happen as much as maybe what it used to. So, for example, my first business was in 2002, 2002. So back then, marketing wasn't such a big thing. People were buying email lists and spamming people and sending terrible emails. And marketing wasn't very sophisticated like it is today. So today, we all need to think about marketing for everything that we do. And this is a conversation I have with my team a lot, is that everything that you do that is forward facing towards the customer or the client is you need to think about your reason for doing it and your desired outcome. So, why are they going to care? Because people are being inundated with thousands and thousands of messages, thousands of ads. Everything is in front of us that we're just so overstimulated that what is it that you can do that will make you stand out? So, and this is where it goes back to that if you've done your research well and you understand your clients and your customers, you will have a really clear idea on how that best way is to connect with them. Because I think a lot of times people who don't really understand marketing will think about, I have to pay for ads. I I'll go and do advertising on the radio. I'll pay for ads in this magazine, or this newspaper contacted me instead for $1,000 or $5,000. They'll write an article about me. That's the wrong way to go about it. And you're going to waste money and you're going to feel really frustrated. Instead, it's thinking about what tactics can you do that will connect with people. So I always recommend to people, like, if you're first getting started, I would say one of the first things you want to do, especially for a service business, and a lot of people who are coming out of corporates, I would say probably what I see in Female Fusion as well, about 7 out of 10 are going into some sort of service business. So typically it's, they did one thing in the corporate and now they're providing that as a consultant or doing something slightly adjacent to that. So with that, you want to be thinking about, how am I going to make my ideal customers aware about who I am and what I offer and how they can buy from me. So the first thing you want to be able to do is to get contact details of those people. So either get their email address or their mobile phone number. And it depends upon the market that you're in, because some markets are really into WhatsApp and WhatsApp marketing, where others are more focused on email. Some are a bit of both. So how are you going to get those contact details? So typically it's going to be offering something of value that is going to be for free, that they would want to have, that you are going to solve a problem for them, and that they would give me their email address in exchange. So one thing in the digital world, and I know that you do it and I do it as well, is creating something like a lead magnet. Lead magnets are something that's typically like a PDF document or a workbook or a checklist or a toolkit, or it could even be like a mini training course that would solve a problem of your ideal paying customer. But it doesn't have to be that. It could be as well volunteering to deliver a workshop for a trade association, especially if that trade association represents all of the people who might be your customers. Do it for free, because you are going to have 10 contacts at the end of that who will come up to you and go, "Oh, hey, I love that. Could you, come to our company, or could you do that?" That is a lead magnet as well. You don't have to be so overwhelmed, but what you want is, you want to be able to get their contact details and communicate with them regularly. So having a landing page where you can advertise that lead magnet, having the lead magnet, having an email system where you can capture their contact details and then engage with them regularly, whether it's email or WhatsApp or whatever it is, with information, not selling. I think that's where people get it wrong as well, is that they think marketing is selling. Marketing is not selling. You will sell maybe 10% of the time after they've got a relationship with you.
Yeah, great. Now switching gears, I you told me that you won an award, right? And spent some time with Richard Branson on Necker Island talking about entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, so it wasn't an award. It was so one of the things as well that I think is really important, that people don't necessarily think about when you own a business, is it's important to be surrounded by other people like you, or who are doing similar things, to have that community. So for example, like your community, Annie, that having that safe space where you can be with people who are doing similar things gives you the opportunity to grow. So I'm in a couple of masterminds, and because for you and I, being we can't be in our communities, so where do we go for that community? So I'm in a mastermind with other 7 and 8 figure business owners, and they have all sorts of businesses, bricks and mortar businesses, digital businesses, service businesses. but we all have similar revenue. And so we went to Necker Island in 2024 and spent a week with Richard Branson on Necker Island. So it was me and 30 other women from around the world who had similar sized businesses.
And tell me, share a little bit about this experience. What was the one thing that impressed you the most, or what was the thing that left a lasting impression, or what was the thing you learned after so many years in business, while speaking and being there with Richard Branson?
It's really interesting because I think people sometimes reckon that they're going to go to Necker Island and they're gonna talk to Richard and pitch their business idea or get a nugget of wisdom from Richard that's gonna make them millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Necker Island isn't that. Necker Island is more of a being around other highly accomplished business owners, including Richard, who is such a visionary, and being in that space to be able to feel grounded, to be connected with nature, and to have that time to really slow down, to open your mind up to other things. So one of the things that we spoke about a lot when I was on Necker Island was the whole idea around moonshots. Is one thing that Richard is a big proponent of, and that's basically those ideas that are so crazy that people look at you and they would laugh and go, "That's crazy. Why would you do that? That's not possible." And you're that person. And, I was always that kid as well that was like, "Oh, yeah, watch me. I'm going to do that." So it was a lot of um, conversations around like big, crazy ideas about things that could it be possible? Could it not be possible? What could you do? Changing the world and listening to Richard's stories as well about things that he's been involved in and how he has really wanted to take the wealth that he's made and to use it to do good and to change the world and to create other things that will leave a legacy and an impact. And so there was a lot of conversations around that with Richard and with other people. And I think the other thing that I learned from Richard, and I was very lucky, Richard is the age of my parents. He's late 70s, and he is obsessed with fitness, obsessed with like health, longevity. And so he gets up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. He plays tennis every morning. Once a week, he goes on to an island called Virgin Gorda and he rides like the whole length of the island. And Richard, that I was always up going for hikes because I'm very sporty. I love being active. And Richard said to me, he's like, "Oh, Jen, you want to go for a bike ride tomorrow morning?" He's like, "I'll meet you at the dock at 5:15." And only a few people went because they were like, "Hell no, I am staying in bed." So I went cycling with Richard and we went to this island. And at first, I was keeping up and we were like chit chatting, going along. And then all of a sudden, you get to like hill one, slowly like get behind, and Richard's like further ahead than like hill two and hill three. And then after about the fourth hill, I was like, I actually had an asthma attack because last year I had suffered a lot of lung infections. So I was recovering from one of my many lung infections last year. So I ended up having to stop. And everybody else did. I don't think nobody actually made it to the end with Richard, including one person who was actually a personal trainer as well, couldn't get to the end. So he's like was
Wow.
insanely fit. And the thing that I learned from him is he's like so focused on, living well, looking after your health, um, nurturing your spiritual, your mental well-being, your physical well-being. And Necker has kind of really become that place for him. I found that I really switched off and had a lot of space to just be and to think and be surrounded by so much beauty.
Um, Talking about well-being and how you have to look after yourself, etc. That's all well said, but when and I hear this from many people and the people I coach and others. Well, the thing is, I have to work and I have to bring money. I don't have any other source of income, and that's it. I have no other choice.
Yeah.
So, what do
I
you
mean,
think about this? Do we really don't have choice, or do we?
I think there's two sides to that. Um, because it depends, right? And I think every person's situation is different. And I think I would be really glib if I sat here and said, you know, that is a choice and you don't have to do that. Because sometimes there are situations, there are things that happen to people where you don't have a choice and you just have to push and work as hard as you can. And I see that with within my community. I see a lot of women who end up getting a divorce and their, you know, their husband doesn't contribute and all of a sudden they have children to look after, family, all of these things, and they have to work really hard to be able to build that up. So you do have situations like that, but I think that we need to also look at it and say everything is a choice and we do have to push hard in seasons. But if you have a business, you want to ensure that at the very beginning, you're thinking about how you can make it as easy as possible. Don't overcomplicate stuff. And I think what happens is that people overcomplicate and you end up creating something which is unsustainable for you. Now, I see this as well. If you have come from a bigger business or a corporate role, and all of a sudden you're setting up something for yourself, oftentimes you're thinking kind of from like an enterprise perspective. Because, when you were in corporate, you had like the HR team, the sales team, the marketing team, the operations. And so everything was siloed and everything was like big enterprise systems, lots of complications, but you had hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of people working in those areas. And so that's something to keep in mind as well, that what worked for you in a corporate is not necessarily going to work for you in your small business. So try and create a business that is going to be as simple and as easy to run as possible. And I've created businesses where I've overcomplicated it and looked at it and been like, what am I doing? Like, and overcomplication could be with systems. It could be too many offers, serving too many different types of people, because you're like, well, I'll take money anywhere. I'll service this type of business or this type of audience, and just being so stretched that you can't focus on one thing. And oftentimes the people who are the most successful and the most profitable just focus on one thing or maybe two things, and that's it, and go deep and specialize, and it makes it easier. And it's hard if you're in it, right? Like if you're feeling pressured to make the money, that you're like, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. But that means that it's taking your focus away from really specializing and doing that one thing. And if that one thing isn't bringing in the revenue, and if it doesn't have potential, look at what you can create that does, that makes it easy, that makes it simple.
Yeah. And the other thing is, people just think focusing on one thing means that doing nothing else, but actually you are creating content because you have to be visible. You go to
Yeah.
conferences. You potentially want to write a book one day. You
Yeah.
do all these things which are surrounding that one thing, and it is
Yeah.
a portfolio, the way I always call it, which is all around one thing. And you are spreading this knowledge on
Yeah.
different channels and different ways, and that's a big thing, and that's what
100%.
actually moves you forward. So when people think,
100%.
oh, I'm doing only one thing, yes, but the thing is, you are doing it at different levels, at different directions, deeper, more not that deep. I mean, in many different ways, shapes, and forms that would actually resonate with different people in your niche. So it's
And,
one
you
thing.
know, it's not one thing. And, but it's keeping it simple, right? Because the other thing as well is if you're doing 10 things, you're also confusing people, right? Like, for example,
Totally.
if you were coaching people and supporting people and building portfolio careers, but then you were also selling shoes, and you're, I would be like, what does Addie do? And yeah, I can always I can always tell, and I see this with some of our members, and I often have quiet words with them about this, that I see when people are struggling, when it's like all of a sudden they're doing one thing, then they've launched a new business, then 3 months later it's another business. And the problem is when you do that, you're, almost kind of dividing that revenue by, a certain proportion every time. So you're doing two things and you're cutting it by 50%. Three, it's a third. Four, it's 25%. And you're limiting the potential of growth. So it's better to focus on being known for that one thing.
Yeah. So again, connected to health and well-being, when something bad happens to you, right?
Mhm.
How do you continue going on? And you had this experience recently. How do you
Yeah.
gather the strength to actually go through such a predicament and such a illness to and continue be positive, continue working, continue focusing on your business? How do you do that?
So I think there's a couple of things to this. One is going back to what I was saying, that if you have systems and if it's very clear to your team or the people who support you within the business what good looks like in your way of working, um, it makes it easier for you to be able to step back if you have something going on. And it could be illness, it could be a crisis, it could be a problem with a family member, it could be divorce, could be having somebody ill within your family. This is life. We all have things that happen. So being able to build a business that can operate without you in it, even just temporarily, or even if you want to take a holiday, it's really important to be able to create that. When it comes to mindset, now I think I guess I should probably say here as well for people who don't know, um, I was diagnosed with breast cancer for the second time 4 months ago. So I had breast cancer in 2012, and then I was diagnosed with it again in the same place, and it was much more serious. And I had two types of cancer this time. So I've had a double mastectomy, and I am currently going through chemotherapy. I'm still going through chemotherapy right now. And it changes your perspective, right? And has it been easy? No. But the thing is I look at it and I look at it and go, this is only temporary. I can't change what's happening to me. But what I can do is I can change everything else around me. So I can change how I talk to myself. I can change um, how I treat myself. I was, up until I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I remember the day I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I went to the hospital. I had a mammogram booked. I had another appointment after that. I had a meeting after that. And then I was delivering a workshop that evening. I had like my day was perfectly packed and planned. And when I went for my mammogram and my scan, the doctor who's been my doctor for 13 years was like, "You're not going anywhere." And I could see the fear on her face because she's known me. And she's like, we have an emergency protocol for cancer, and I'm calling it on you because we need to biopsy this. We need to treat this urgently. I need you here. We need to cancel your day. And at that point, I realized our health is the most important thing. So having a business is great because when you have your own business, it gives you the freedom and the flexibility to create the life that works for you. But that's where we need to also have that mindset of I can't change what's happening, but I can change how I talk to myself, how I talk to other people, and what I'm learning from this, and how I am creating change for myself, my business, my team, my family, and maybe other people around as well. And it's only temporary. I've learned a lot about myself through this. It's not easy. Chemotherapy sucks. I have chemotherapy every single week, and I still have my hair. I have quite a few bald spots, which maybe you don't see on here. But I wear a cold cap every week during chemotherapy, and it's an hour before chemotherapy, it's throughout chemotherapy, and then it's 4 hours after. So you're typically wearing the cold cap for 6 to 7 hours every week when you have it, and your head is frozen at minus 30 degrees. So it gives you a lot to think about during that time, and just to look at life and go, I can't change it, but I will create a business that's easy. I will create a work environment for my team. I'm very focused on impact at the moment, so making sure as well, and we've brought health and wellness a lot more into our community, that we've added that as one of our pillars, where before I was very much like business, business, business. That's all people need. Where, I'm really reflecting on that and going, if we don't have our health, we don't have our business.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say is that I absolutely admire the way you are going through this, because if you didn't share with us in that group that we are together, I would never know, because you're absolutely your usual self, forceful, um, questioning things, helpful, very, very helpful to many people. So I'm just really heads down of how you do it, Jen. It's really amazing. And if you can share, where do you find this strength? What do you do to be able to do that?
I think everybody handles things differently, right? And for me, after getting over the initial fear of being told I had cancer again, and understanding that I had to have chemotherapy, and that was quite emotional for me. I said to myself that I am going to come out of this better. And I promised myself that I was going to come out of this being mentally stronger, emotionally stronger, sort out my life and do things that I had wanted to do but hadn't focused on. So make me more of a priority to heal. And one of the things when you have cancer is, and everybody deals with it differently. Everybody has different reactions, different responses. But I have managed to kind of cope with everything by being super organized and keeping my brain busy. So, like a business owner, I've planned out my diet, worked with a functional oncologist. I've got military precision about everything that I eat. I exercise every single day. And I do dip into work. Some days I work a full day. Other days I work shorter days. But I find that mental stimulation keeps me going. So for example, exercise, I'm actually probably fitter than I have been in quite a while, because I have focused on making sure that I get exercise every single day. I'm lifting weights every day, I'm walking every day, I'm doing Pilates. And so all of those things that movement has helped me mentally. And it's really made me realize as well how important being active, moving, doing something is important not only for our health, but also for our well-being and our focus as business owners. So that's helped me a lot. It hasn't been easy. I've had a lot of allergic reactions. I had a very crazy, weird allergic reaction where I got second-degree burns on the heels of my feet as a result of one drug that they gave me. And I was unable to walk for a couple of days. And that to me was really, really difficult for me to show up because I was in a lot of pain and I was feeling sorry for myself and just angry with everything going on, being like, why me? But then I realized as well, it's like, just get through this. This will pass. It is all temporary. Everything, everything will pass. So I think sometimes we just need to look at it and go, life is good. Thank
Yeah.
you for finding my cancer. Thank you for giving me good access to healthcare, good access to doctors and the chemotherapy and all the people supporting me that's going to help me get through it.
Absolutely. I was just also want to share with everybody watching and listening that you created a manual about preparing for chemotherapy because you said there is nobody giving you this, and I was like, my goodness, even she's going to chemotherapy and she's creating manuals. That's an entrepreneur. Uh,
Yeah.
all the time, this is the brain of an entrepreneur. Okay, how can I solve this issue? Amazing.
Yeah, and that's, looking at things and, the hospital always jokes as well that I am complaining to them nonstop about everything. And I said to them, I'm like, look, I'm not doing it to be a jerk. I'm doing it because I notice that there are gaps and people who are going through cancer deserve better. And if I don't speak up, who is going to speak up? And it's not like I'm not coming at it from a place of like trying to be difficult. I'm coming at it from a place of you need to do better. You need to have, and even as well, like I complained to the hospital. I'm like, where's your standard operating procedures? Like every organization needs like SOPs for how they do things. If not, every person you come into contact with is going to do something slightly different. And for people who have cancer and going through chemotherapy, that's not okay. But it's interesting that it's like that all over the world. I've heard from people undergoing chemotherapy that the experience that I had was very similar for them as well. But Annie, I've also halfway through writing one book and about 25% through another as well. Because I'm just using that space. I find that some days you have chemotherapy brain and it's kind of similar, like if anybody's been pregnant or had a newborn, that you have like this baby brain and your mind doesn't think the same. And I do have that fog sometimes, but then other times I've just felt great and been like, this is great. My mind is really working. I've got ideas. And I think it's also because I'm not so in my business. My team are running the business, that it's given me the creative space to think about other things as well.
Amazing. Amazing. I can't stop saying amazing simply because it is. So, what is the book about? Or it's secret?
So no, it's not secret. So one book is on how to set up a business in the UAE and how to relocate your business to the UAE. And this as well comes from my frustration of seeing such a lack of information, because the UAE is a really interesting place to own and run a business, and it also has its tax advantages as well. But there is no one central place to find out the accurate information about what you need. And what happens is people will end up setting up their business incorrectly, be given wrong advice, go to the wrong place, and it ends up costing them thousands and thousands of dollars to fix the mistakes that they've done. So there's one book on that. I'm probably at about 100 and some odd pages for that at the moment, and there's an online course that goes with that. And then the other book that I'm working on is around resilience and dealing with tough challenges in our life, because I've dealt with cancer, but I've also dealt with divorce. I've dealt with a lot of other traumas as well. And, like you've said as well, that people often say to me, like, how do you deal with that? And I think it's just the different sort of systems that I put in place to manage that grief, manage the trauma, manage the illness that's enabled me to keep going. And I'm not perfect, like all of us are humans. I fall down on the floor and cry and feel sorry for myself, but then also realize that we also have to pick ourselves up and move on and get on with things, because we can't sit in that spot forever.
Yeah. What a great what great words to finish the podcast with. It was really great to spend this hour with you and to learn more about you and to hear your advice on business. I'm always open to advice at any stage. And thank you so much. And I wish you absolutely all the best. I have absolutely no doubts that you're going to go through this without, not without a problem, but you're going to go through this. You're going to beat it. I just wish it happens faster and with less days that you feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's for all of us. It's okay to feel sorry for yourself, right? But what's the most important is you go, I processed it. I feel sorry for myself. Pick yourself up and keep moving, because you put one foot in front of the other, even if it's just 1 or 2 steps a day, all of a sudden it gets easier and easier. And it's like that in life. It's like that in business, that there's always a way out of things. You won't be like that forever.
Thank you, Jen. All the best.
Thank you, Annie. I appreciate your time. It was a great podcast. Thanks.